Despite this being one of my favorite videos to make, I somehow forgot all about it at the beginning of the year. So here we are in April talking about how much I spent on books last year. This is something I've been doing since the start of my booktube journey. I believe I have filmed this every single year since the start, and it's just really interesting to reflect back on what I've been spending all of my money on and just see how my spending habits have changed over the years when it comes to reading. Somehow reading is a really expensive hobby. Despite us having libraries, there is definitely something inside of me, at least personally, where I see other people with these large book hauls in these beautiful libraries in their houses, and I just want that so badly, but it is not necessarily fitting into my budget every single year, every single month, or what have you. And in making these videos, it has really given me a lot of perspective on how much I'm actually spending on my reading habits, because in my mind, I'm not spending that much money. I will go to the bookstore and I will buy a bunch of thrifted books, and I will get things half off, and I will go on their sale days. But when you look at how much I'm spending on books, it is not adding up to what I think it is in my head. So if you want to see any of my past videos, I will link the most recent one up here for you, and then from there I might have linked the one before that too. But in this video we are just talking about 2023. And being very honest about last year, I don't really think I went in with the mindset to spend a lot less. I think I wanted to spend less than I had in previous years, and while that was a good goal, I wasn't very specific about what that meant and what that looked like. So I definitely think that I spent less and I bought less books, but it was still a lot more than I really anticipated it. And I don't think I've looked at these numbers since the end of last year, so we are going to really get into these. But let's start off with how many books I bought every month. So for the sake of editing, I'm just going to put up on the screen the number of books that I bought per month, starting with January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, and December, for a grand total of 49 books. And of those 49 books, I read 25 of them. Additionally, I unhauled 3 of them without reading them and or finishing them. All 49 of these books were physical books. I did not buy any ebooks or audiobooks. And 2% were bought from Target, 2% were from Boswell Books when I went to Wisconsin to visit some friends, 4% were from Barnes & Noble, 6% of them were from half-price books, 6% were from book sales, 12% were from Amazon, 14% were from Book Outlet, 16% were from Book Depository, and 37% were from Changing Hands Bookstore, which is a local bookstore to Arizona. The most I spent on a book was $27.99, and there were 3 books that had that price tag. There was Wayward, A Strange and Stubborn Endurance, and The Book of Gothel. But the least amount of money I spent on a book was $2.50, which was nothing to see here, and I got that from a book sale. And without further ado, our grand total for those 49 books is $561.82, which I believe is roughly half of what I spent in 2022, but I also think that I bought half as many books. That being said, one of the interesting numbers I wanted to look at was how much I wasted on the books that I did not read and or that I unhauled, and that total came out to $249. So of the 562, let's round up, I did not read $249 worth of those books. At least last year. There are a few that I have read this year, but I did not read them in 2023. So $250 nearly that I wasted. So I guess the question is, where do I go from here? What am I doing this year in 2024 to not spend quite as much? And looking at my numbers so far, I don't know how well I am doing, but I have really set myself out to try and follow a few guidelines. None of these are really like concrete rules for me. They are more just guidelines that I think about when I am going into a book buying frenzy and I just really want to buy a bunch of stuff. I kind of ask myself these questions, which is it for a book club? Is it for a book challenge that I need it to talk about in a video? Just because I prefer to hold up books. It's easier on the editing process, and it just helps me kind of center my thoughts when I have the book and I can like look inside of it opposed to just editing a picture on the screen. I also consider if it's a special edition or if it's something that is limited edition. I don't really get a lot of these, but there was one book that I purchased because it's an author that I have read from before. I believe it was Ashley Herring Blake, and I hadn't read Iris Kelly Doesn't Date, but I found a signed copy in one of the bookstores that I had gone into, so I figured that was a acceptable purchase for that one because it was a special edition. And I also am trying to only buy books that I have already read but aren't on my shelves, because I'm trying to use Libby a lot more, use my library a lot more, and stop buying books that I then DNF and or don't like enough and want to unhaul because it feels a little wasteful that I'm spending money on books that I don't end up liking. So I'm trying to take those thoughts into consideration. If I do like a book and I don't have it on my shelf, then I add it to a list of I want to own, and it will be something that I'll bring up with my family around my birthday and or Christmas if they would like to purchase those for me. And if not, towards the end of the year, my goal is to be able to buy a handful of those books that I can add to my collection. And my last guideline is that vacation purchases are justified. And that's all. I just think that books are a souvenir for me a little bit, especially if I go to a different place and it's the first time I've ever been in that bookstore. I like getting the books from that vacation trip and either reading them with my mom or reading them on the plane or whatnot. So I think that those are valid reasons to buy some books. But other than that, I'm really trying to use Libby and Hoopla, and hopefully I'll be going into my library and getting some physical books there as well, just to support them a little bit more. But I just am trying my best to be more thoughtful about it, even though I'm not trying my best to limit the amount of books that I'm buying yet. So it's a work in progress, but I feel like I'm going in the right direction, especially since I've nearly halved the amount I've spent on books since I started my booktube channel. But I think I've been rambling for quite enough time. I'm considering doing a bit of a booktube analytics video next week or the week after, talking about how much money I have made on booktube since I got monetized. If that is something that you would like to see, let me know what things you would like me to address in that. If there's any further stats that you would like me to show you from my analytics, I would be so happy to do that. I just find those videos super duper interesting, and I think it would just be very funny to show you the pennies that I'm making on booktube. But that is for either next week or the week after, so please subscribe if you would like to see that video. But before I go, leave me any money emojis in the comments, or let me know how much you think you've spent on your books in 2024 so far. But yeah, I am going to end this here, and I will see you next Tuesday for another bookish video. Goodbye.